How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees. Another day, another spring training news update. We got some injury updates for you guys regarding Ben Roark, our reserve catcher, and Frankie Montas obviously underwent surgery to correct that shoulder issue, and it doesn't seem like it was season-ending. Dare I say, maybe an August return. There's a lot to talk about regarding these injuries. Some updates regarding, just player performance and whatnot. Exciting stuff coming out of camp as we are just about a couple days away from live action. I believe Saturday is the first live action game, so we're really close, guys. Like, we're just a couple days away from real live action baseball, and we got you guys covered on the daily with updates and performance analysis and everything you need to get prepared for this upcoming regular season. So if you are interested in that, make sure to drop a like and a subscription below for the upcoming content. But Ryan, before we dive into Ben Roark, this finger issue that turned into something a little bit more serious, how you do today, my friend?
I'm doing all right. Again, as you mentioned, Yankee baseball Saturday. Like, mark your calendars, guys. I mean, I know I'm pumped. I know I'm looking at this season, and there are so many opportunities for some really good baseball and some exciting, exciting prospects for the Yankees that are going to play. But on the injury front, the Ben Roark news aren't great. I think you look at Ben Roark, you look at the Yankees catching depth. Obviously, Roark wasn't going to start out with the team, assuming that Trio and Higashioka were healthy. But catching is a position where injuries and fatigue and things like that, they build up pretty quickly. And it's an injury-prone position. All it takes is one weird foul ball, and you lose a catcher for a month. So it's one of those things where, again, people can joke about how Ben Roark, is like, is he really real, right? And I think some of those jokes are pretty funny. But end of the day, a third catcher is really important, right? We've seen Rob Brantley get featured on the Yankees in years past. He's no longer on the Yankees. Look at the Yankees catching depth in AAA right now. It looks like it's Josh Breaux and Austin Wells, right? Now, this presents a new opportunity for Wells to potentially, get himself in AAA and kind of, force himself to play with the Scranton Rail Riders, where you'd never know if he hits well. You never know how long it takes you to get the call, right? We talk about injuries. We talk about, needs, Oswaldo Cabrera was really, he was featured on the Yankee lineup a lot more because Andrew Benintendi got hurt. Had he never gotten hurt, I don't think Cabrera gets as much playing time as he did. Donaldson's unexpected struggles, coming into the year, it was kind of not that it was foolish, but I think everyone had expectations that Donaldson would hit, right? Him not hitting opened up opportunities in the infield. It put pressure on guys to perform. And I think it spurred them to call up guys like Cabrera and Peraza to give them a spark. End of the day, the Ben Roark injury sucks because that's a third catcher. That's someone that, can call a game well, can work well with the pitching staff because of their defense. You feel a little concerned about Austin Wells behind the dish because he isn't as experienced. And, there are a lot of reports and a lot of people, with even within the organization believe he still needs a lot of work defensively. And Josh Breaux is a young kid too. He's 25. He's never seen Major League Baseball. He's never seen Major League action. I don't even think he's on the 40-man roster. Not to doubt these guys, not to say these guys can't handle it, but, you do prefer to go with a veteran catcher if you have a 15-day IL stint. You don't want to call up Wells and then send him down, or call up Breaux and then just send him down. You're starting to use their options. You have to put them on the 40-man. End of the day, this isn't an ideal situation. And of course, an aneurysm, that's scary stuff, right? That's what caused the finger injury. We were saying there were reports about the finger thing. It looked, you initially just think it's like some bruising, or maybe he jammed it, whatever it may be. No, it was from an aneurysm. That's scary stuff, right? This isn't like it hurts for me to talk about this because it's not even just a matter of Ben Roark that got hurt, on a foul ball to his hand, or Ben Roark that got hurt pulling something while running. Ben Roark that got hurt on something that's just a freak. That's just a freak of nature thing like that. You can't really anticipate you're going to have an aneurysm. So it's scary, it's life threatening, and more importantly, it's an unfortunate setback for a guy who came into camp healthy, and this is just, you can't really do anything about it. And that's really what sucks the most about this. I really think he would have gotten some major league reps, and kind of losing a month. Again, I mentioned with Austin Wells playing well. If Wells plays well, what are you going to do? Send him down for Roark? No, I don't know what you do at Roark at that point. So it's just an unfortunate situation for him all around.
Yeah, I mean, look, Ben Roark, he came from the Minnesota Twins last year in that more comprehensive deal, and immediately, goes down with a abdominal issue, I believe it was, misses most of the season, only plays about 40-something games in AAA, and did not look so good offensively. He's known to be more of a defensive catcher, has a little bit of pop to his bat, but he needs experience, you know what I mean? Like, the injuries consistently are just so cumbersome on development, and ultimately, you look at guys like Estevan Florial's good examples of that. The wrist injuries he sustained really derailed him, and ultimately, I kind of feel as though the Yankees are better off giving reps to like a Josh Breaux or an Austin Wells. And, to be straight, even if Ben Rortvedt was healthy, I'd still be willing to give the reps over to Austin Wells over him, because ultimately I think he's the future of that position for the Yankees. Defensively, got a lot better in 2022, has a lot more room to grow, has a lot more, just time needed to take that next step forward. But it is very scary, and I do, wish the best in sending all the prayers in the world to Ben Rortvedt, who is obviously coming back from surgery. But it says he's only going to be out for a month, which is really a great thing. Like, just think about how much more serious that could have been if they didn't spot that and fix it and do what needed to be done to correct that. So he's going to be able to continue his baseball career. And some players are not as lucky. Those things happen, and it permanently damages their nerves. You know what I mean? Like, they permanently can't throw or catch or whatever it might be. So he got really lucky, and ultimately, I think that's an opportunity for him to kind of bounce back and showcase his qualities. And I imagine he will serve as the backup catcher, or at least get an opportunity at some point down the line. I think they want to see what he can offer. Kyle Higashioka obviously now cemented as the primary reserve. He always was going to be, but I think Rortvedt had a good opportunity to unseat him if he proved to have really good defense and could even be a league average offensive catcher, because Kyle Higashioka gets on base at a sub 30%. Hits double-digit homers every now and then, hits 10 homers, which is valuable, but I'd rather a guy that gets on base a little bit more. But then again, you look at Rortvedt, he only got on base at about 30% at the AAA level with, I think, a 32% strikeout rate. So, transitioning over to the MLB, I don't necessarily think that he was going to be a good offensive player, but a lot of teams kind of ride with poor offensive catchers because the real value comes as a defensive player. And I think that's where, like, Jose Trevino, like, he's not a great offensive player by any means. He can launch a couple homers here and there, but he's arguably the best defensive catcher in the game. So I'll ask you this, before we kind of move on to Frankie Montas injury update there. Even if Rortvedt was healthy, would you still be willing to give him opportunities, or are you kind of like, I see Austin Wells as the future, I'd rather get him the opportunities over Rortvedt, who really is more of a stopgap or just developmental player who probably won't amount to much?
Yeah, the way I look at it is, you need guys with experience with a pitching staff and can handle a major league pitching staff to you have to have those guys as available options, for your depth at catcher. You have Bro and Wells, who, Bro is a better defensive catcher for sure than Austin Wells. Like, it's not like Josh Bro can't catch, but I imagine Rortvedt is the best defensive option of the three. And again, it's a matter of, Ben Rortvedt was already on the 40-man roster. You can't 60-day IL him, I imagine. I don't think that would make much sense. Maybe they do. Maybe the injury is that severe. But, because you can't 60-day IL him, or you won't 60-day IL him, that means that you have a roster spot that's on a guy who's injured, right? And you have to, get rid of one of your guys on the 40-man to make room for a catcher. That could create some complications. I imagine one of those guys could be Esteban Florial or Davy Garcia. Neither of those two guys have minor league options. And quite frankly, especially in Florial's case, we've talked about this before. I just don't think that there's a roster spot for him on the major league team. I don't think that's ever going to open up for him at this point. But I think you need to have a defensive guy. Yes, I 100% agree that Austin Wells has so much more upside as a baseball player, but we don't even know if Austin Wells is a full-time catcher yet, right? So how can we pencil him as like the next guy up if someone goes down? I looked at Rortvedt as, kind of like how Rob Brantley was, except with higher ceiling. I think he's a better defender. I think he's a better version of Rob Brantley, where you can just kind of call him up whenever you need him to play some games, and then you can send him down whenever you're done. And, he can work with the pitching staff. There are no issues with him calling a game, with him framing, with him defensively. And I think that's such a huge thing to kind of not have. You got to pray that you don't have any catching injuries until Rortvedt gets back. And I get it, Again, we talk about upside here, but I think when we're talking about a third catcher, you don't care about upside as much as you care about stability. You just need depth, because you're not going to call up Austin Wells for 10 days and send him down. I still think Austin Wells plays a role on this team going forward, in this season at least. But, Ben Rortvedt, it's a tough loss for just... It can become a tougher loss if there's another injury to catching position, I guess, is my main point here.
Yeah, and transitioning over to another kind of injury that definitely caught us off guard, the season-ending or supposed season-ending injury to Frankie Montas. Now, that's obviously one that's a little bit more annoying, right? Because Ben Rortvedt's a backup. Frankie Montas has ace potential. He's shown qualities that justify that over time. But the shoulder injury, surgery, arthroscopic, obviously, I don't think they didn't need to fix his rotator cuff, they said. So that's a really good sign that his recovery process should be a bit more efficient and he shouldn't have to be out for a full season. I think you tweeted out yesterday you were looking at like mid-August or early August as a potential return date for Frankie Montas. Look, if the Yankees can get him back and give him a month and a half, 2 months of action before the postseason, that is an ideal scenario because you could even just utilize him out of the bullpen, inning, 2 innings, just kind of a long relief scenario. This is where you're looking at like Luis Severino, Nestor, and even then, I'd say Severino is such a great opportunity for the Yankees to utilize as a bullpen piece or as a starter, depending on, you kind of have to measure fatigue. If you're in the postseason, is Severino or is Nestor Cortez like the least fatigued? You probably go with one of those options. The other one you go out of the bullpen with. Because we already know Carlos Rodon and Garrett Cole will be the 1, 2. The 3 is kind of up for debate. You usually go with a 3-man rotation in the postseason. So getting Frankie Montas back mid-year, like, how do you kind of feel about that? What do you think his value would be at that point? Because obviously he's coming off a pretty significant injury, coming off surgery, has to ramp up. He can't pitch for like 12 weeks over the next couple months. So when he does make that return, if he does make that return, how are you utilizing him down the stretch?
Yeah, so I view Frankie Montas as a really, really, really good pitcher, right? I think a lot of people have this idea that Frankie Montas is not a really good pitcher. He is, right? He is. I don't. I know that stretch with the Yankees wasn't great. I know the injuries aren't great. I completely understand that. But if we look at the 12-week, timeline here, it's 12 weeks of not throwing, right? So typically that's followed by 12 weeks of throwing and rehab. Then you get back to playing Major League Baseball. That's 24 weeks. That's August 9th. From yesterday, that was for August 9th. So if you give me Frankie Montas on August 9th, you've got about 2 months, about a month and a half, let's say, worth of starts in there. You give me a month and a half of starts of Frankie Montas. Give him some time to build up. The comparison I'm going to use here, 2019 with Luis Severino. He missed basically the entire year except for the month of September, made a couple of starts to end the year, and was healthy for the postseason. Frankie Montas is not going to be starting in the postseason unless there is unless everything goes wrong for the Yankees in rotation. We're talking, one of their 4 guys go down, one of their 4 guys currently in there go down. Their 5 starter, which is Clark Schmidt or Domingo Germán, completely bust. They're terrible, unpitchable in the postseason. Which, if you got to that point, the Yankees would trade for someone. And then let's say that they trade for someone, their 5 starter sucks, and one of their 4 guys get hurt. All 3 of those things have to happen in order for Frankie Montas to be scheduled to start a postseason game. As you mentioned, if you can get him in a bullpen role, you start him to end the year, right? Or maybe, you start grooming him for that bullpen role, kind of how, either how Severino came back in 2019 where he started, or how he came back in 2021 where he was using the bullpen. This gives you 2 opportunities. To, 1, see Frankie Montas and evaluate him for the postseason. If he pitches really well, could you imagine having that weapon in a playoff bullpen? That's lethal. That's lethal right there. He's got a diverse pitch mix. He can handle both sides, righties and lefties, because of the splitter. He can handle lefties, and because of his slider, he can handle righties. That's a beautiful pitch mix right there. He'd be really damn good in that role. And then number 2, Severino and Montas are free agents. And let's be honest with everyone here. If Luis Severino makes 30 starts and has a sub-3 ERA, there's a chance the Yankees might not be able to pay that contract. There's a really good chance. The Yankees just paid Carlos Rodon. If Frankie Montas pitches well, and Frankie Montas, probably isn't going to get that big of a deal in free agency, do you just throw a 1-year try-it deal or a 1+1 deal to Frankie Montas, and you're paying below ace salary for a guy who could be an ace caliber pitcher, or you attach a qualifying offer to him, and that means that even if you choose not to re-sign him, and let's say, you just say, Severino, you're worth this amount of money and we want to pay you long term, that's the option I would love to see because I love Luis Severino. You know what I got? My Dominican hat on. Love Luis Severino. But if you attach a qualifying offer to Frankie Montas and someone bites on that, you have another pick for the draft. So end of the day, Frankie Montas performing well is good for this team. The Yankees need Frankie Montas to perform well when he's healthy. I know that you may disagree on the idea that Montas can come back and immediately be an impact guy, but I really buy into his stuff, right? I'm a stuff first guy. I'm going to live and die on that hill that I think guys with high level stuff are going to perform at a high level. If they have base level, if they have solid command, which Montas does have solid command. End of the day, man, I don't think Frankie Montas's story in pinstripes is done yet. I think we closed the book too soon. I think he still has a shot to change the narrative around him this year and then even potentially be on this team next year.
That's an interesting take. Extending him on a 1-year kind of prove it deal coming off injury. We've seen the Yankees do that before, notably, Corey Kluber is a guy that kind of stands out to me coming off injury. Good pitcher, was pretty solid for the Yankees, ends up going to the Toronto Blue Jays. But, my only fear is that you go and you extend Frankie Montas expecting him to be a starter and then he gets injured again and then you're down another guy and then you have to replace him. So it's like, it's kind of like you have to go into those type of deals like with a backup option in mind. Luckily, you got Clark Schmidt and Domingo Herman right now, but Herman may not be on this roster next year. Maybe Johnny Brito looks good. Didn't he like crush yesterday at spring training? And didn't he strike out Rizzo and like and Judge? Wasn't he killing it?
Yeah, I think it was 2 days ago. He did pretty well. I think he's throwing a bullpen today. I'm not sure if it's live BP or just side bullpen, because I saw a clip of him warming up and doing his pre-throwing prep. But yeah, no, I mean, the way I view it is, you mentioned, Montas can definitely get hurt. That happens. I don't see that as not a possibility. But you just mentioned it there. They have depth. Randy Vasquez will have another year in the system. Will Warren another year in the system. Both those guys pitched in AA last year. I imagine they'd be in AAA at least this year. Maybe Will Warren needs another year in AA. Who knows? But if you have, you continue to develop your starting pitchers, Brandon Beck is going to start his first year in the organization after getting Tommy John and missing all of last year. This is a guy who pitched in college, is an older guy, so he should be a fast riser. I don't think it's crazy to say he could be, in a major league bullpen in 2 years. Clayton Beeter has already dominated AA. He could start out in AAA. I think the Yankees have the pitching depth to survive losing Montas next year. This year it's a little bit different because their top two depth guys are Herman and Schmidt. But as you mentioned, Herman may not be here next year. I know for a fact Schmidt's probably going to be here next year. Beeter. So if you have Schmidt, Beeter, Warren, and Vasquez and Brito, and you have 5 minor league guys who are major league caliber arms to kind of give them a shot if Montas goes down injury, I'm perfectly willing to take that risk. Maybe other people feel differently. Maybe you feel differently, but I just can't overlook the upside with Montas. That's my Achilles heel. Maybe I'm getting fixated on it, but I just can't overlook it, man.
Yeah, no, I hear you. You've always been a big Montas fan, though. And the thing is, like, I like him too. It's just like the injuries consistently are kind of annoying, but obviously, like, it's unpredictable. Shoulder injury. I wish he would have just got surgery weeks ago, if not months ago. Why did they wait this long to figure out that the guy was freaking hurt still? You know what I mean? That's what confuses me. Probably starts going through a throwing program, realizes, okay, something's off. But the fact that, like, this obviously existed all off season. You know what I mean? This obviously didn't go away. This injury has been there since the end of the regular season, and just now they're deciding to do this. That's what kind of pisses me off. Like, we could have been so much closer to getting him back, but instead we waited until now to freaking find out that he's injured and needed potentially season-ending surgery, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I do want to push back on a little bit on the surgery thing, just because it's like the LeMahieu thing, where if LeMahieu actually needed surgery, the Yankees we're going to wait, and we're going to wait to find out. It's tough because, the call for surgery, you have to be really careful with it, because we're talking about, it's a procedure. It's inherently a much more dangerous procedure than I think a lot of people give it credit for initially. Not because it's not safe, not because doctors don't know what they're doing, but if we do a surgery on someone who doesn't necessarily need it and we don't know, that could cause some issues. It could unnecessarily set him back. Would you rather, like, the way I look at it is the Yankees were thinking to themselves, if he can avoid surgery, we have him on, we shut down for a month, we have him in May, right? If we don't ever find that out, we could have unnecessarily delayed him until August 1st instead of August 9th. So, you lose an extra start of Montas, let's say. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. I think end of the day, you just need enough time for him to ramp up, to be healthy, to figure out what he is in the postseason. I know a lot of people are like, oh, Brian Cashman's going to say he's a trade acquisition. I think at this point, I would rather Brian Cashman not trade for pitchers at the deadline. I feel like I think I'm scarred from trading. I think I'm kind of scarred at this point. Maybe I need a little bit of a break. Let's trade for hitters.
I'd love to have JP Sears and Waldichuk and Wesneski right now. I'll tell you that.
I would love to have. I was a big Ken Waldichuk guy. I would love to have the Waldichad, dealing and fighting for a 5th starter spot. But end of the day, I can't sit here as a business student, not even with a business degree, and try to dissect a medical situation. I just don't know the situation well enough. So, I understand the frustration. I completely get your side of it too, of I'm just why did it have to be spring training? Why couldn't it just be the off season? But at the same time, I don't imagine they were just your shoulder hurts. We'll think about this in March. It was probably they started throwing him. Things weren't going well, and they wanted to figure out if there was surgery or not. They didn't even know until Matt Blake said he might need surgery, and then Aaron Boone was he needs surgery, not even 10 minutes later.
Yeah.
So, it's a tricky situation. It's a lot more fluid than I think I could even understand.
Yeah, I think that's totally a fair perspective. My only counter would be we knew that DJ LeMahieu was weighing surgery versus rehab, and we knew that both had their good chances of working, right? The thing is he was down in Tampa working out and rehabilitating for like the entire winter. You know what I mean? I don't know what Montas was doing this whole time. I don't know if he was working out. I don't know. He could have been, but he wasn't doing it with the team. So the team had no idea what was going on, until he showed up at pitchers and catchers report. And suddenly they're finding out like Matt Blake's like he might need surgery, and 10 minutes later Aaron Boone's like he needs surgery. Like he's gonna be out for the whole season. It seems to me like they didn't even know what was going on until he showed up. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, like they would have known months ago. They would have been talking about, does he need surgery? We have to seriously weigh this. We can guarantee he'll be back here. They did an MRI and they were like, okay, yeah, he definitely needs surgery. Unless he re-aggravated or something during a bullpen session, which is like very concerning because it was like he must have been the first couple pitches that he pitched this offseason. Didn't even really get his program going. He was just starting to get the workouts in. You know what I mean? Like the timetable of it makes no sense to me because they were like, he's still like 2 weeks away from starting his pitching program. They were like, he's just starting to work out again after the shoulder injury. Clearly, they didn't do any like MRI or anything. Otherwise, they would have seen it immediately. Be like, okay, like this clearly some structural damage. They went in there and cleaned it out with the arthroscopic surgery. It just the timeline doesn't match up to me. But again, there could be a lot of stuff that we just don't know. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But obviously, like they knew what they're doing. But it does piss me off that instead of losing him for maybe the first couple months, we lose him for arguably the entire year, and who even knows? He could come back and really struggle. He could come back and it could take him months to get back to where we need him to be. And just because he returns in August doesn't mean he's pitching at his top quality and until maybe late in the postseason, if we can even trust him there. So there's a lot to discuss about this, but ultimately I don't even really factor in Frankie Montas as a variable that can help us down the stretch here. I think that it'd be optimistic for him to come in and really provide that sort of support. I'd rather go with the guys that we have now. I'd rather give opportunities to some guys that will be pitching consistently, like Brito, or Clark Schmidt, Domingo Germán over Montas. He's gone after the season anyway. All of those guys are staying. Clark Schmidt is staying. I mean, Germán may not be here, but Brito, he's still here. Go with the guys that are going to be on your team long term, not the guy who's coming off a serious shoulder injury that you really can't trust because he struggled even before the shoulder injury happened. So it's definitely a little bit concerning. But guys, I'd love to hear your perspectives below on kind of the catcher situation. If you think that Austin Wells should be getting more opportunities, or Josh Bro, who's got some serious power to his bat. Obviously, the Ben Wardfed injury, not ideal. Really feel bad for him because he's just been fighting so hard to get on this team and have an opportunity to compete at the MLB level, but just keeps getting hit with setbacks. So love to hear your perspectives on that. Perspectives on Frankie Montas if you think he can make any sort of impact down the stretch. But as always, my friends, make sure to like and subscribe as always, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.